Hi guys, this is Rachel from the Embassy, and today I'm going to talk to you about letters of recommendation. So letters of recommendation are a really important part of your application as well, because it's the only opportunity that the admissions committees will have to see an outside perspective of who you are. So everything else in your application, for example, your essay and any other questions, your CV, if there is by chance an interview, that's all from your perspective. But the letters of recommendation are a way to showcase how you portray yourself to your professors and to your counselors and to kind of an outside perspective. The letters of recommendation are also important because it's something that doesn't necessarily depend on you for the timeline. That's why it's really important to do these as soon as possible and to start at least advising your professors or your teachers and giving them a heads up that you will ask them to give you assistance on this. Because, for example, you can write an essay or get other documents or do things on a short notice. Even though it's not recommended, it can be done. But letters of recommendation, you have to have a minimum amount of time to give your professors time to really finish the process and write you a good, strong letter of recommendation. So we're going to talk about today a little bit what letters of recommendation are, how and when to ask for them, what they should contain, and how you can help and support your professors and teachers along that way, and then give an example of what might be a strong or not strong letter. So for our undergraduate opportunity students, it's important to note that most of the universities, and especially the ones on the Common App, are going to ask for two letters that come along with two or what are called teacher evaluation forms. So a teacher evaluation form is kind of like a survey, an electronic survey through the Common App platform that your teachers have to fill out, and they basically will say how strong are you as a student in these certain areas, and then how you compare with maybe other students in your class. The Common App will also ask for one. It's called a school report form, and this needs to come from a school counselor or an official from the school. This must be related to your high school. And these can all be submitted online. The one good thing about the Common App is that the teachers can submit one one recommendation, and they don't have to submit one for each school to which you apply through the Common App. So that's a big advantage for using that platform. For the graduate students, the requirements can vary a little bit depending on the university. So it's important to really check with each institution as soon as you figure out the institutions where you will be applying. Generally, 3 letters are recommended, so that's kind of what we will go on. It's rare that they would ask for more than 3. Some might ask for 2 and an extra optional letter, but 3 is really the average and the number that you should be planning on. It's also important to note that many universities will allow for an online submission. So your professors can give you their email and you can set them up in the system as your recommender. They will receive most likely a generated email, an automatically generated email, and they can follow the instructions to submit the letters. So it's nice that they can be submitted online, but do remember that each university at the graduate level will have their own system and their own process. And so that means that each recommender that you will be asking will need to write 5, 6, 7, 8 letters. It doesn't mean all the letters have to be completely different, but it is important that they, address the admissions committee at the certain university and that they submit it on each platform independently. So what should the letter say? What should be in a letter of recommendation? How should it sound? Well, these are kind of some general recommendations that although we don't write the letters as students, as applicants, as Opportunity Fund grantees, we can kind of help instruct our teachers and professors about what the letter should be like. Not necessarily the specific content, but but what types of content it should include. So for example, the letter should always state how long the recommender has known you and in what capacity. So I have known John for 4 years, and I was his professor in two different courses, in thermodynamics and in derivative math, or whatever it may be. So it's important to say if what classes the professor taught, and that you were a student in those classes. So the letter should be written kind of in an academic context. It should be formal. It should not be informal. They should be able to talk in academic terms, and remember that they are talking to other academics in the U.S. So it's a letter from one academic to another. They should be able to provide concrete examples of your ability to succeed in an academic program. So remember that these should be, maybe talk about the time that you worked on a specific project, or that you scored the highest score in your whole class on a certain exam. These kind of examples really are powerful because they are concrete and memorable. And so as specific as that recommender can be, the better. And remember that these should be in the academic context. So it's important to not talk as much about a personal background or personal characteristics, but your character as a professional and as an academic, because you are all applying to be in a study program in the U.S. So who should you be looking for to write these recommendations? Well, ideally, this is someone who knows you well in an academic context. So oftentimes we get the question, can my boss write a letter of recommendation? And it's not a definite no, but this is a good thing to ask specifically case by case with your Education USA advisor. It's better if the letters come from academia, or rather from professors who have taught you in academic context. It's also really important that it's a person who knows you well. So for example, if the rector or the president of your university, or the dean of your faculty, if you're thinking of that person, the question to ask is, well, how well does this person know me? If you have had really close contact with the dean, worked together on certain projects, then it might be a good person to ask. But letters that are written by someone who simply has a high title are really not that valuable, because they cannot speak to your academic character and who you are as a researcher, or as a teacher assistant, or as a student. And it's really not a good idea to get a family member or a friend, because these are people who are obviously going to say good things about you. So the relationship should be professional. We know that at times professors do become friends. You've worked with them for years, and you've worked with them on very detailed thesis projects, but the relationship should be an academic one. It should be based in topics of research or classes or academics. So for those undergrad students, it's important to get a kind of a diversity of letters, because undergraduate studies in general are more are broad-based, and so it's try to get a professor who has taught you in an area that's more related to humanities, such as language or writing, or even kind of like social sciences, art, in one of those areas, and then maybe a teacher who has been in a math or a science, a STEM area, science, technologies, engineering, and math. That just provides a diversity to your application package, and so that's a recommendation that we give. And on the graduate level, try to look for a professor who has a graduate degree, a master's or a doctoral degree, and it's preferable that this is in your area of study. So this shows that if I'm a professor and I have a master's in engineering, this shows that I am recommending my student for a master's in engineering. I understand what it takes to be a student at the master's level, or same thing at the doctoral level. I went through the process, and so I understand what it takes. That's why recommendations from professors who have a graduate degree already are seen very highly. And then a great person to always think of is your thesis advisor, your thesis supervisor. This is someone who has worked with you probably at a very detailed level for a good amount of time. So this is a favor really that the professors are doing for you, and as professors, they enjoy doing this. I mean, this is something that yes, it's an additional task for them above their other work and their other class schedules. But this is they're excited. They want their students to continue studying. They want their students to be successful. And so the first thing to do is thank the recommenders for agreeing to do this or for agreeing to meet with you, um, and then explain to them exactly what we're talking about today. What's the purpose of a letter, and how they should maybe be structured, or things that are very valuable to a United States admissions committee. And then you can remind them exactly what your relationship with them was. Maybe you took a course with them 5 years ago. So it's important to say, remember that introductory, introduction to music course that we took. Yeah, that I was in that class, and this is what I learned out of it. I got out of it, and this is why it was important to me. It's important to give them as well a copy of your transcripts and a copy of your CV. This is really important so that they will be able to understand um, what your achievements have been, what your honors are, and they can maybe highlight some of those. It's not necessarily important to highlight all of those, but so that they have that context and have that framework. Also, if you have a draft of your essays, of your personal statement, of your statement of purpose that you will be sending to the universities, please give that to them as well, because that not only gives them a context as to what you have done, but also what you are planning to do and what you are planning to study and where you are planning to study. In addition, you should give them details about the format. For example, should it be submitted online? If it should be submitted online, how is it submitted? What categories do they have to fill out? And also when it is due. Provide them with kind of an overall list of all these universities that you are applying to and all of the due dates so that they have that information in one place. And in general, it's important to orient them well. Give them a guide. Give them all of the information that they could need or that they could ask for, but never write the letter yourself. This is not a good idea, and this is very much frowned upon by admissions committees in the U.S. So if a professor asks you, I'm happy to sign any letter that you write, you can explain to them that in the U.S. this is not an acceptable practice, and that you are happy to provide them with any kind of in any kind of material that they need, your CV, even your essays, but it is important that they be the ones who write the letters. And this brings up another question that is not on this slide, but it's important to address. So some of you may have professors who don't speak English, and all the letters do need to be in English. So if you have some professors that speak English, that's great. I mean, they can write the letter directly in English. But if you don't, if your professors that you hope will write your letters don't speak English, it's not a problem. We can get them translated, and these wouldn't necessarily have to be official translations. So what you can do is ask them to write the letters, get a copy of the letter if they are willing to share it with you. If they are not willing to share it with you, then please put that professor in contact with your Education USA advisor, and then they can work together to coordinate the translation. So your professor will send the letter in Spanish. Then once the translation is done, either by you or your Education USA advisor or by a translator, then you send that English version back to the professor, and that is what they will submit. So it's very important that they are the ones to submit it, even if the translation has been done by someone else. So it's important to ask for these letters, as soon as you have your list of universities ready with the final list of the institutions to where you will be applying, because you really need to start these conversations with the professors. Maybe one of the people that you were really counting on is on sabbatical, or is not in the country, or is unable for some reason to write the letter. So you'll need to have a plan B and a plan C, and really do it with enough time in advance so that you are not putting an extra burden on the professors. So this is an example of, it's a sample poor letter of recommendation. It's not, and it's an interesting concept, because if you read this letter, it's not negative. It's very positive about the student. It's clear that the person writing the letter thinks highly about the student and that she's a very strong student. This comes across in the letter. But as you can see on the right, there's a description as to what's wrong with the letter. So essentially there are two main things. Number one, there are no details. It doesn't tell any specific experiences that the recommender has had with the student. And that's not a good thing, because it's very general. It doesn't stand out, and it's not memorable. It doesn't, really showcase the student and who he or she is. And the second thing that is wrong with the letter is that it only talks about things that can be seen in other parts of the application. So for example, all of you have to submit transcripts. And basically everything that this letter says, for example, the courses that the student took or is currently taking, her GPA, where she is studying, the year she is in school, all of this stuff can be seen in the transcript or in other parts of the application. And for that reason, it's really duplicating what is in the other application. So the recommendation is to have these letters be supplementary to the rest of the application. There should be a space that showcases who you are as a student, and really a personal account of who you are as an academic. These are 4 web pages, 4 resources, and we'll send these to you in the PDF version, so don't worry about copying them down or anything. But these are all different resources about letters of recommendation. These are things that you can look over and then you can share with your professors, because these are resources that they might find helpful while they are preparing your letters. So finally, some next steps. So these are some things you can do now that with all of this information in mind about what makes a good letter and who should write your letters. Take some time during these 2 weeks to make a list of 3 possible recommenders. And actually, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have 4 or even 5 potential people on your list, just in case. It's not an easy task to think of these people, but that's why it's important to really think about who during your high school or your college career really impacted you. And if you're a graduate student, you want to pick maybe professors from the university, and if you're a high school student, you'll pick teachers from your high school, and then your high school counselor. So then make a meeting with your Education USA advisor to discuss these people that you have thought about. And then finally, once your Education USA advisor sits down with you and gives the go-ahead, please contact your recommenders as soon as possible. So this should be done hopefully during this next period, not necessarily to provide them with all of the information, but to reach out and start the conversation about your plans to study in the U.S. and the possibility that they will be able to write you a letter of recommendation. You should give them at least 4 weeks before the application deadlines. You should have the final conversation with them and give them all of the information that they might need to write your recommendation, such as your CV, a draft of your essays, and the like. So thanks for your attention, and remember that this is a part of your application that you can start on now, even without knowing exactly what universities you'll be. So please remember to make a meeting with your Education USA advisor and discuss this topic. If you have any more questions, I'm available. I'm always available, and we'll send you the presentation so you have access to the links to review and also to share with your professors. So thank you so much and have a great day.